everybody, and welcome to At the Table with Tom and Eric, a show about the people who play games. My name is Tom Vassell.
And my name is Eric Summerer. And joining us at the table today is the host of 5 Games for Doomsday. This is Ben Maddox. Hello, Ben.
Hello. I thought I'd pop in and check out the competition, considering that you've stolen my idea.
Okay, let's jump into that before we do anything else, because there has already been some accusations in regards to this, and those accusations are completely baseless and mostly are done by alt accounts from Ben himself.
Well, I have a lot of sock puppet accounts, and also it's an established fact. You can go on the Wikipedia page. I invented the interview. So if you go back, interviews didn't exist before my show started.
Right.
So I expect, and actually, on a serious note, though, they just announced the Golden Geek Awards for this year, and 5 Games for Doomsday came in 3rd place, which was very nice.
Oh, who won?
Congratulations.
Board Game Barrage won. And it's wonderful that you two have just started a new podcast, because it means another year without victory for me.
That is what Dan said, but that's baloney. Because we know, first of all, I would withdraw. I mean, that feels weird. Secondly, it won't happen because Eric and I are starting from the scraps. We're at the bottom of the heap.
That's right.
It's a crowded pool now. We were like, the only ones for a while, and then now we have a lot of competition, and including you, sir.
That's
and
true.
One of the reasons why we have you here, one, to learn about you and chat and hang out, but also to pick your brain and figure out where's the magic.
So you want to steal my idea and then get me on and tell you how to steal my idea better. So that's the deal, is it?
That is why you're here, yes.
Well,
Good.
I feel like they're very different shows, but why don't you tell people about your show? What exactly is your show? People have never heard of it. Why do we even need to prepare for Doomsday?
So on the topic of stealing ideas, there is a famous flagship BBC Radio 4 show called Desert Island Discs, in which guests choose 7 songs to take to a desert island with them. This has absolutely no relation to a board game podcast in which guests are asked to take 5 board games to a non-IP infringing cabin in the woods and talk over why they've taken them. So yeah, that's basically the premise, and I talk to the great and the good. I've had both of you two fine gentlemen on the show.
I have to choose which one is which. Yep.
And I go through their lives, both in gaming and out of gaming, and we talk about their choices and kind of what gaming means to them. And I guess to some degree it's an act of curation. What games deserve to survive the apocalypse, And at the moment it's Catan and Redbox D&D, it seems to me, and Magic.
Those are the front runners.
Oh, I didn't even know I didn't even know that D&D was an option, because that's like forever.
So many people choose Redbox D&D. It's incredible. It's designers and game people of a certain age, of course, but yeah, absolutely, it's really super popular, and it seems that the whole world of gaming is sort of built on Catan, Magic, and Redbox D&D.
I wonder if I might not even bring any board games and bring 5 RPGs, because you could last much longer on that.
Well, you should have asked me. The rules, the premise is paper thin to the show, so you can basically bring anything, so it's fine.
It could have been balloon animals.
Bruno Faiduti just said, "I'm taking 3 games. You can like it or lump it." So I had to do the whole show, and he only chose 3. And the good Dr. Rainer Knizia,
he brought 10.
The good Dr. Rainer Knizia chose 4 games of his own and a deck of cards.
What?
Both of those are so on point to those particular designers. That is amazing. Well,
wow.
I got to redo my answers now. I would like you to delete my episode, and we'll have to redo it at some point.
Great. No problem.
Well, let's get some background from you here, Ben. You are currently in Berlin, Germany.
That's right.
But you didn't grow up there. I'm not detecting a German accent. So
Nein.
What was your journey? Where'd you grow up, and how did you end up in Berlin?
So I come from a beautiful chocolate box town in Worcestershire, England, on the Welsh border. It's called Tenbury Wells. And wow. if you like sheep, it is the place to be. There are far more sheep than people where I'm from.
Okay.
And it was one of those places, I realized very young I had to escape And so I went off and I went to drama school and trained to be an actor. And the wonderful thing about training to be an actor is that when you leave university, you're qualified for absolutely nothing. And so I trawled through menial jobs, and I ended up, a friend of mine lived in Austria, so I ended up living in Vienna for 8 years, and which was very beautiful, but it's a village of 1.5 million people. It feels very it feels almost like a theme park, Vienna. It's so sort of the 18th century. So I decided I wanted to go somewhere with a bit more joie de vivre. So I moved to Berlin, and yeah, it's Berlin's a crazy place.
That's what you've been saying. Well, this is interesting. So you've been in Are you there all the time? Do you often go back to visit?
Yeah. I haven't actually been to England since before the time we don't talk about. So I need to go back in the next couple of months. I didn't leave the country for 2 years basically, and I went to Portugal a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, I need to go back and visit friends and family and things. But the internet has been a complete lifesaver for everyone, I think, over these times, because at least we're able to stay in contact.
Huh.
So what are you doing these days for a day job? I think you said you're a teacher. Are you using those drama chops for anything at the moment?
So I do everything. I'm that sort of millennial patchwork profession. So I teach at a university. I teach English at a university. I'm a voiceover actor. I'm a stage actor, and I make a little bit of money from the podcast. And I've sort of moved into the world of doing sort of voiceovers for board games and stuff. So I managed to keep the wolves from the door just about, but they're around the corner.
Voice work in board games? Like what board games?
So I did a couple of trailers for Ultray recently. I did the voices for what's that game? Oh, that's terrible. I can't remember it. Carta Ventura, which is that little.
I got that on the way to me. I'm very curious about this one.
Yeah, it's actually very good. It's a sort of one play thing. It's a kind of choose your own adventure kind of thing, but it's nice. It's quite innovative. I did a couple of trailers for that. And it has been announced, so I can say it. I am the voice of the app for the epic TC Petty III joint My Father's Work. So I'm doing the voice for the app there, which is very exciting.
Nice.
Eric says nice, but you can see him thinking competition.
Why didn't they contact me? It's because I'm much cheaper, Eric. That's why.
It very well could be. Or they're just sick of me. That could also be the case. So talking about VO work for the games, because when you're presented with a whole list of sound cues for doing one of these game systems, it's basically a lot of text. You don't necessarily get a sense of the gameplay. Like my work with the One Night series, I haven't played One Night Ultimate Werewolf a ton, but I've said all of the words and all of the roles a lot. Do you feel that disconnect of, I don't really know the game as well. I just know this as a voiceover gig.
Yeah, well, I did the voiceover, and it was pages and pages of prose, and I got to the end of it and thought, I have no idea, because you have these disconnected prose bits that tell bits of stories, but it wasn't even laid out sort of chronologically. So you have these branching story paths, and you read these paragraphs that are similar but different. And so I have absolutely, and then after I did the voice gig for it, I went and watched playthroughs of the game and stuff, just to get a kind of feeling what the game is. And I mean, it looks fantastic. I don't know what my voice work's going to be like on the app in the end, but hopefully it won't be too offensive on the ears.
Huh. This is really, I don't know. I think I would want to play the game just so I would know. I feel like I would be part of it. I always feel a disconnect when someone is like a voice for a cartoon or something, like a superhero, and they'll be like, I don't know anything about the X-Men, but I was one of the X-Men voices. And I'm like annoyed by that. I don't know why.
Yeah, sure. I am a gamer in my defense. But often with voice work, I don't know what it's like in Eric's experience, but my experience as a voiceover artist, there's no time to research. You get a call and saying, can you come in the studio tomorrow and do some work? And often I don't get the script beforehand. I rock up at the studio, they give me the script, and I go in and I read the stuff, right? With My Father's Work, I did it here at home. So I had a little bit more time, but still it was a sort of 3-day turn around. So, and they couldn't ship a game out to me from the States, so you kind of have no choice, really.
Right, and often it's a pre-production sort of thing, so
Sure.
you don't have the final version, you don't have the game yet when you're presented with all of this. You need to make all these decisions. So it's really an after-the-fact thing when you get to actually experience it as a product, and that's after you've done all the work for it.
And I mean, so when you've played One Night Ultimate Werewolf, do you do the terribly cringe thing of playing the app with your own voice?
Oh, yeah, sure.
It's not cringe for Eric. He actually revels in it.
I do. Because then I don't have to remember the actual mechanics of it. I had to do it live once. There was a Gen Con event where they thought, wouldn't it be great to just make Eric do it live with the app? But of course, the app has been edited down to the barest essential of sound. And so they're just doing clip after clip after clip after clip. Yeah. Whereas I need to breathe. And so trying to read to the app, I couldn't move fast enough as far as transitioning to the different roles. Having to do that all the time and match the app feels like too much pressure to me. Whereas I can just hit the button on the app and enjoy the game for what it is and forget that it's me talking.
Yeah, well, when I do get the game, I'm going to listen to the app first and just check I'm not terrible before I present it to my game group. Because if I'm terrible, I would not hear the last of it. Just months and months of relentlessness. So I'm going to do that when I get a copy of the game.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's get back to, since you're both bragging about doing voiceover work, let's talk about interviewing. You interview a lot of people, and you do this framework of the 5 games of Doomsday. But the question that Eric came up with, but I'm going to steal, is I used to do interviews before both of you were born. That's not true, but I mean...
Oh, and I think we're of a very similar age, Tom, but still.
No, but I'm saying I did interviews back in 2004. But one of the things I had a problem with when I did my interview series back then was asking people the same question over and over, hoping that they would answer this a different way, and then you can grab that answer and kind of twist it, and follow that route, right? So how do you do that? We need your secrets.
Well, so I saw this question in the notes to let people in to break the fourth wall. What? And I was thinking about what do I do? So the first question I asked, so the show develops over time and you get into a groove and it sort of gets a structure over time, even though I'm very meticulous. You've both been on the show. You've seen the show notes that I send for each interview because I'm scared to death even though I edit the show, I'm scared to death of dead air and losing it and not being able to think of something to ask. So I'm meticulous. I basically write every question, essentially. But the first question is always the same. What was your process of choosing the games? Was it sentimentality or was it pure practicality? Gloomhaven gets chosen a lot for, pure practical reasons, right? And then people are infinite and interesting and different and fascinating. So I do research on them. I get to them to send me bios. And I guess half the work of the show is writing the show beforehand and finding sort of what I perceive to be the core of that person. So it's sometimes I kind of run down a CV, but then I will always ask a more sort of general topic that is related to what they do, but I feel that they're able to be informed about and give interesting answers. And then the fundamental thing about interviewing, I find, is keep yourself out of it as much as possible. My opinions are completely inconsequential. People come to the show for the guest, not for the ramblings of me, because I'm a very mediocre person and all of that. So I ask the question, then I let the interviewee answer. And I think that's the fundamental thing.
Who's intimidated you the most? Like, who were you most in awe of?
It's often the process of getting the person on the line. So Richard Garfield, I had to jump through a number of hoops.
Yeah.
Now I kind of know him, so I can just send him an email and it's fine. But that first introduction, and they were very clear. His assistant said, you can go no longer than 60 minutes. If you go longer than 60 minutes, I'm going to come in and I'm going to stop the call. And so I was really quite scared. And he's West Coast, right? So it was 3:00 in the morning here. And, and Richard Garfield is like, I was speaking to people who aren't gamers particularly, and they'd heard of Richard Garfield, and it was quite a thing. And he ended up being the loveliest guy in the world, and we stopped the interview. I got in 59 minutes 59 seconds, and then he carried on talking to me for 10 minutes afterwards, telling me stories and stuff. And I guess after that I was kind of like, I don't think people really are intimidating. Mostly people are nice, and mostly people are very interested in talking. Richard Garfield's very interested in talking about games, and he's a very self-effacing, very humble guy. And so, yeah, I mean, I was so nervous before I got on the call with him, but afterwards it was fantastic.
Cool. One more thing I want to be sure to ask you before we move on to our main topic, and that was your on-ramp to the gaming hobby. What's the earliest thing you can remember where you said, I am a gamer, this is my jam right here?
So that's fascinating, isn't it? I wrote a piece a few years ago on BGG. I had a very short-lived blog on BGG, and I wrote a piece about my sort of gaming history. And so I was a gamer, I think, a long time before I realized I was a gamer. So I played HeroQuest back in the day.
Sure.
And then I played Call of Cthulhu when I was sort of 17, when I was a student. I played Call of Cthulhu for a bit. But I think the first time I realized that I was a real gamer as I was round at a friend's place. I just got into the hobby, so I'd used the dice tower. I remember watching the People's Choice Top 100 to sort of divine what, because it was 10 years ago, so I was sort of 34, 35, and I'd had a misspent youth, and you get to a certain age and you think, I just can't do what I used to do anymore. So I need to find something, to fill up the hours. And so we were sat and we played a game of Libertalia, and we were sat around. This is like 2012. And I sat there, and suddenly halfway through the first round, I thought, I know what to do here. I know what card to play. I know that if I do this, it'll bounce off this and this and this and this. And suddenly I thought, I get these things now. And then from then on, I was completely hooked, all of the endorphins rushing into my brain. And I just thought, whoa, this is it. I'm a gamer now. So, yeah, that was probably it, I think.
Very, very cool. All right, so let's move on to our main discussion. And I was very messy in the way I phrased this in our little document, but you sort of hit on it already there, Ben, when you said, leading into talking to Richard Garfield, that even people who don't know, who aren't gamers, recognize the name Richard Garfield. And I'm wondering if that is something that we've reached with more than just Richard Garfield. The thrust of designer gaming is elevating the name of the designer, putting the name of the designer on the box, and therefore making them more of a household name for people who play games, elevating them to the role of a director, a film director, or famous actors. Do you think we've reached that point where we have more household names of game designers? And if not, how do we get there?
I mean, I don't think we have yet. I don't think anyone. So I would suggest probably the biggest hobby game is Catan. And I don't think most people associate Klaus Teuber with Catan, right?
I agree. And I would actually argue with Eric real quick that Richard Garfield is not associated with Magic that strongly. Not even like Magic players who play today know Mark Rosewater, who's a developer of Magic. They know him more than they know Richard Garfield.
Sure.
Well, I just wasn't going to argue with Ben. He said it first. Anyway.
But I think so the question, I think, boils down to a question of media. Do we think games? So in the notes you sent me, you said, are they going to be as big as sort of films and music and that sort of thing? And so you have to ask the question, I think, do you think tabletop games are going to be as big as those art forms? Are they going to be as big as video games? And, I've been watching a lot of videos on sort of old Nintendo games recently. And the sales figures for these games, Super Mario Brothers, Mario Kart, I mean, it's tens of millions. It's absolutely nuts. Shigeru Miyamoto is a household name, right? And I think, I don't know how games, especially now we live in a virtual world, how games are going to break into that sort of ultra mainstream thing. But I think as gamers grow, as the pool of gamers grow, I think these designers who have a really distinct style, a really distinct voice, people like Uwe Rosenberg, Stefan Feld, they're going to be, they are going to be more and more famous, and people are going to treat them more and more like people to be admired. I sort of shy at the word celebrity, but I don't see games ever breaking through to that ultra mainstream. It's fascinating within the little world of games. I still get butterflies when I meet certain designers and stuff, but compare it to Cristiano Ronaldo, compare it to Brad Pitt. I mean, it's a million miles away.
But I think there's a difference there. When it comes to Brad Pitt, you say Brad Pitt, and that's right, but that's because he's a visible actor in a movie.
Right.
Most people do not know the name of any screenwriters.
Sure.
A lot of directors, people only know them sometimes through osmosis and people talking about them, but even directors aren't as well known as the actors. No one knows the name of the people, because no one sits and watches those endgame credits. Until MCU happened, no one ever watched credits.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the problems. Like, for example, that even happens now. If I went into a convention, more people would know who I was over Richard Garfield, and that's not, in my mind, that's not a good thing in a sense. Like, they should know him.
Yeah, with all due respect, it seems to me the wrong way round, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I'm not taking offense because I agree with you too, but it's by the very nature of things.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the dividing line when somebody becomes a casual game player into becoming a more interested hobbyist, is taking an interest in the people who are creating this thing? Just like going back to movies, directors maybe are more household names, but the screenwriter, you're usually only going to pay attention to that if you are a film buff and interested in the craft of creating movies. So is that the dividing line for games as well?
Well, I think game designers are more akin to writers than they are film directors, right? So even the process. So it's interesting, in Germany they're not called game designers, they're called game authors,
right?
Which I think says a lot about the process of game design, right? They have their game design, like a writer takes a book to a publisher, then gets it edited. It's almost the same process for a game, right? And I think as soon as you're able to go, I kind of know what Stefan Feld does, I kind of know what Paolo Mori does, then you kind of think, then that suggests you know something about games and you've sought to know something about games. And I think that's what makes a hobbyist, right? I have a friend, she is absolutely the best game player I've played with. She wins every time we play, from the lightest little trifle to the heaviest Alexander Pfister Euro. And she has no idea about games, really. She doesn't buy games. She doesn't indulge. She doesn't listen to podcasts or know anything about the designers of the games. She just, we put a game on the table, she plays, she destroys us, and then she goes home. And that's really fascinating. She loves playing games, but she has no interest. She's not a hobbyist in the sense, because she has no interest in the hobby, I think.
But I think that's fine. Like, I should be able to watch a movie and not care who the director is. I'll be like, I enjoyed that movie. I don't think that's as big of a deal. And the same thing I think with people, but like you said, the more you are a buff, the more you get into it, the more you might go, ooh, I like that game. Who designed that? I was at Gen Con once, and I was talking to Alan Moon, and I saw some guys at a table there playing Ticket to Ride. So I sidled over and I was like, hey, the guy who designed this game is right over here. And they politely went over and said hi to him, and I think I interrupted their game. Right? Because for me, I would have been like, where? That's a cool thing. Yep. But for them, it was like, that's interesting. Now let's get back to playing this game.
What I think what's fascinating, what hobby board games has done is, growing up as a kid, you don't really connect games with people actually making them, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's this thing of like people who are just very casually into games, you don't think of the author sat at the table with the prototype, iterating and iterating and iterating. There's this sort of idea that games sort of come together by a company and then you play the game and it's great. It's only sort of when you get into games you realize, there are actual people behind this. There are actual authorial voices. And it's interesting. I bet if you spoke to a lot of people who aren't into games at all, I think 90% of them would go, well, I kind of know there's a designer in an abstract way, but it never really occurred to me that they're a person in the same. They would never associate it in the same way that you'd associate J.K. Rowling with a book, for instance.
There's a number of publishers that put little bios at the end of the rule books, and one of them that I'm thinking of is GameRight, which is one of the most mass market, at least as far as that spectrum goes, the more mass market in the hobby sphere. But they often put a author biography at the end of the rule books with a little picture that says this game was invented by this individual and gives a quick little bio, which I think goes a long way to creating an identity for this is the person who crafted this thing you are enjoying, and a neat little tidbit about them. And I find it interesting that one of the more mass market group appeal companies does that to try and create that personal connection to the creator.
Doesn't Ravensburger do that on the inside of the box, or is it Alia? Yeah. Some of the German companies do that.
There's a much more sort of focus on the author in Germany. So I think Schmidt-Spieler do it. I think Alia do it. Yeah. They have a little bio that they're very keen on putting forward the idea that there's a designer. I mean, I assume Hasbro still don't have designers' names on the boxes unless it's one of their sort of more hobby imprints, right? I think the tradition in England and America is that you wouldn't put the designer's name on the box. It would just be the name of the game. And I think in Germany, they sort of spearheaded that sort of authorial world of game design, I think.
I sort of went a little farther in my initial question as well to say, well, here's where we are with game designers. What about other aspects of the production process? Where are we with illustrators, with graphic designers, with developers, which may fit closer to a director in putting all the pieces together? There's sort of a push, at least in the diehard hobbyists, to say, well, we should be celebrating these other aspects of the production process. But if we're only at this point for designers, where are we with all of those other behind the scenes creative professionals putting these games together?
I think, Eric, that at this point, we're definitely, in the last 2 or 3 years, I've definitely seen a big push for artists, illustrators.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And graphic designers, well, I mean, other than, what's his name, who does all the Eagle Griffin games?
Ian O'Toole?
Ian O'Toole. Yeah. I don't think anyone could name a graphic designer other than Ian O'Toole. But for artists, I'm definitely saying, oh, that's Beth Sobel did that artwork. Oh, that's, Vincent Dutrait, and this is Piero. And I mean, if you ask me, I could probably list 30 artists off the top of my head. And I think 5-10 years ago, I don't know that I could have done that.
Right. Well, again, there's something about gaming has become much more professional since even I got into gaming around about 2012, and the professionalism of the industry has skyrocketed even in those 10 years, and part of that, I think, is the branding has got really good. And so game producers have thought, if I get Vincent Dutrait to do the art, that's half the work done for this game. Right. A friend of mine in Berlin is the designer of Clans of Caledonia, and he got Clemens Franz to do the art for Clans of Caledonia. And I'm sure that was a huge contribution, the Agricola artist doing the work. And if people don't even know the names, they recognize the style, and I think marketing has got a lot better in gaming, even in the 10 years that I've been involved,
All right. Well, I think we've solved that issue.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking that we could talk about that for maybe 2-3 more hours. There's a lot going on in there.
We definitely could. I want to move on because a number of people had questions for Ben that we wanted to make sure we got to. If you are watching in our live video feed, we have chat running. You can certainly ask Ask any questions you'd like to ask of Ben in there. But I have a few that folks have submitted on Board Game Geek. Before every one of these episodes, I throw up a question thread. And there's a few things that people wanted to know. And so we can start with those while we're waiting for
just
folks to
on
ask them in
this.
chat.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
When I subscribed to the Dice Tower Guild, and when I saw that thread go up, I was just scared to death that no one was going to answer. No one was going to ask a question. I thought, I'm going to log onto this thread and it's just going to be crickets.
Just nothing.
And I will come clean now. I went onto my Discord and said, would someone save me my blushes and go onto the thread and ask a question, please?
Well, fortunately, a few people did ask.
They did.
A few. And Julian is going to kick us off. Were there any games in producing 5 Games for Doomsday that you discovered based on a recommendation of one of your guests? Something that they interested you enough that you said, wow, I should check that out, and ended up being one of your favorites?
So, no, but there is a...
No one can recommend a game to him.
But there is a different thing. I am so thirsty for a game at the moment, and it was one of the... So my memory lasts about 5 minutes. So I don't remember what I did 5 minutes ago. I assume I was on the internet talking to you, but I can't prove that. But my last guest, Steve Kimball, who's sort of the guru at Asmodee North America, he recommended a game, and then I watched a video with Tom the other day. I think he was talking about it. That all I want now is to play this game, and it's so old that I can't find a copy, and that's Lord of the Rings Confrontation.
Oh, I'm about to review that, actually.
Oh, I want to play this game so much. I want to get a copy, and I can only find on BGG, I can only find really expensive English copies, really cheap German copies, and although my German is okay, I fear that my gaming partner's German might not be good enough, so I'm putting this out there. If anyone wants to send me a copy of Lord of the Rings Confrontation, please feel free.
I will now be putting one of those little Apple trackers in mine.
I'll see if I can get Mike DeLisio to steal it and send it over to me.
It's got a mole in the organization.
Wow, that was easy.
All right.
So basically, he said nothing.
Nothing. None at all.
Yeah, but Lord of the Rings Confrontation. It seems amazing.
All right.
So Peter asks if you could make every game designer or publisher print stats on the outside of the box to help buyers categorize a game, what would you insist they all put on the box? Almost everyone does, what is it? Age, playtime, and number of players. But what else would you force them to put on the outside of the box?
Well, German publishers do this. Schmidt-Spieler, I just bought a game we're going to talk about later, and they have a 0 to 10 rating of theme, luck, strategy, and complexity, I think. And I think sort of luck, strategy, and complexity are really, really good stats, right? I think if you know anything about games, it kind of tells you all you need to know, because I guess this is not true, but within the sort of gaming community, high strategy, low luck is sort of shorthand for desert dry Euro, right? And so if you see that on the back of the box, you think, this is no theme. This is the perfect game for me. It's all just dry mechanics, which is my happy place, basically.
You know what to look for.
I want there to be a little sticker that says "We're lying" next to the time and players.
Every time.
Just a big question mark.
I'm just getting tired of seeing that they'll be like 1 to 7, and then you're like, "Is it a 2-player game?" Yes. And how long does it take? 30 minutes to 45. And there's a little tiny per player in the corner no one can see.
Right.
Every Alexander Pfister game is... I played Boone Lake recently, and I think it says 2 hours on the box.
Yes, it does.
5 hours later, we're still trudging through this game towards the end. It's complete lies.
It should say depends on how long you think under gameplay time.
Yes, and depends on how AP-ridden all of the other people who sit around the table are.
How fast can you think?
I just keep a copy of War and Peace next to the table when I play games like that. And I get to read it a couple of times before we get to the end. It's good.
So Richard wants to know about the gaming scene in Berlin and how it differs from the UK. Did you do a lot of game playing in Britain? And how has your travels elsewhere in Europe changed the gaming perspective?
So almost none in Britain. I've been almost, next year is my 20th anniversary not living in Britain. So, but the gaming scene in Berlin is fabulous. It is vibrant and diverse, and people are really into it. And if you want, every night you could find a game in Berlin, and not only that, every night you could find a different game club. Some game clubs cater to very Ameritrashy stuff. Some game clubs are quite casual. Some game clubs are only in German, but they wouldn't be unwelcoming if you turned up only speaking English. People would be great because everyone speaks English here, right? But my Thursday, I'm so happy since the time that we won't talk about. Of course, my weekly game night, and I'm going to give them a name check, at Rudy in Berlin was, obviously wasn't on for 2 years. And to go back and to be able to see all the old faces. And what's so great about our local game club, all the old faces are sort of young faces, right? So we have a complete spectrum from people who look, to me, I'm getting older and older, so people look younger and younger, right? So people in their early 20s to people, my age, perish the thought. And all different kinds of games are played, from the Resistance to No Thanks to super heavy Euros. There was a group of people playing Tricarion the other week, and they finished the rules explanation after 2 hours. 2-hour rule explanation.
Whoa!
And I've never seen a table of people look so miserable in my life. And what I couldn't get to grips with is they just plowed on. And I left sort of 11. I left at 11:30 at night, and they're still there. And I'm thinking, guys, just give it up. Everyone's got to go to work in the morning. And yeah, so my local game group is fabulous, and everyone's so nice, and all the games are played. And with the current situation in Ukraine, the group are coming together and getting stuff together for the refugees, because a lot of refugees have come into Germany. And it's a really lovely, welcoming, varied game scene, which is it's the perfect place to be a gamer, I think, Berlin.
All right, well, Eric's moving there now. We have a question from
I've
Nick.
never seen Merchant of Venus on a table, though, so
What?
I would say that. Never once.
Well, I haven't seen that in any game group. Nick has a question. Is there a mechanism that when you find out, Ben, that it's in a game, you're not going to play it?
I'll play anything, because it's the only way I can get people to speak to me, mostly. But the one mechanism I am very suspicious of, because I think in every game, apart from one notable that I've been told is good, but I haven't played it, so I'm willing to try, it's a mechanism in which one person has loads of fun and then 3 people just spend an hour randomly guessing and failing, is hidden movement. Oh, I cannot stand Fury of Dracula. I cannot stand Letters of Whitechapel. I find them absolutely insufferable. You just go, are you at D15? No. Were you at D15? No. 5 hours. But I am told that mind management, though Senfung Lim did tell me that mind management was very good, though I think he may be slightly biased.
So do you just don't enjoy the evidence gathering aspect of it? Because usually there's more than just Battleship and guessing on a grid.
You haven't played a hidden movement game with my game group, then. Every time, and one time we played Letters to Whitechapel, and one guy was playing Jack, and I just went, "Is it B52?" And he went, "What?" I said, "Is it B52?" And he went, can you see behind my screen? And I was like, no, I just had a random guess. And it was 5 minutes into the game. So I find them insufferable. I find them insufferably boring. Though I should try mind management. People tell me it solves the issue, though I'm very, very suspicious of it.
I mean, it's a great game, but I love that sort of game to begin with. So
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, and Fury of Dracula, a more overwrought, boring. And I played the edition where they had the reset card. So you do gather evidence, and then you get to a point, and then they play the card saying, "I'm just going to another random space." Absolutely soul destroying. And that combat system. I mean, a friend of mine just printed out this massive spreadsheet of predicted outcomes so we could understand that absolute mess. No, I'm not a fan.
All right, that's Poke says, are people from the acting scene also interested in board games, RPGs, or other things like that?
The acting scene in Berlin, pretty much not really, but sure, I think people in every walk of life are into it. And, you know, I came into games with sort of a lot of sort of social deduction stuff, a lot of Resistance Avalon played because they naturally play into my strengths, you know, a lot of talking, a lot of manipulating, a lot of bullying, quite frankly. And but I think what's really interesting is that friends of mine who aren't gamers, when they have something like Skull put in front of them, they'll look at me and go, I see what you're talking about now. I don't want to commit all of this time that you put into these things, but this is great and this is interesting and refreshing. And I didn't understand that these things existed previously, you know, because it still is, to the normie world, for want of a better term, it's a pretty closed book. And I think, you know, it's games like Skull, it's games like The Resistance that bring, you know, mouthy, overly neurotic, dramatic types like myself into the hobby, you know.
Yeah, so you have a good point there about the shorter games, and people play them and think they're playing the most stunning, fascinating game ever, and you know what? They are.
They are. So my go-to game after the game recently for the last couple of weeks has been No Thanks, and I think No Thanks is as good a game as anything that's been designed. It's so pure and brilliant, and it feeds so much into human psychology. And do I take it now or do I not? And it has press your luck, but it's not like Can't Stop, which is sort of game-generated press your luck. The press your luck in No Thanks is generated completely by the meta of the table, based on what has happened in previous games on it, based on the relationships you have with the people around the table. And that's what gaming is fundamentally, right? It is about engaging with other people and experiencing a communal experience. And No Thanks does it as well as anything, I would say.
So one question I think I'd like to finish on is from Nick. Is your vocal impression of an American accent a stereotypical Southern like most Europeans?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Even though at drama school we did learn
No,
New
no,
York.
I'm sorry. This is an audio show. I need to hear it.
So I'll finish my anecdote. So yeah, we learned New York, standard American, and then Southern. And now every time I do an American accent, I talk like that. Can I get a corn dog? I think that's perfect.
Southern,
No?
that's West Virginian.
Specifically West Virginian. That's what I was going for. Thank you very much.
That is excellent. All right. So, well, I mean, I'm sure you would laugh just as much when we do British.
Now I need to hear it. I need to hear it. Come on.
I wouldn't even know how to. I don't do any accents.
I'm sure Eric's English accent is perfect.
I'm sure it's not. I have to do every once in a while. I have to do something that's I try not to make it too posh. So I try and add a little bit of dirt into it, but.
That's Cockney. It's not bad. It's not bad.
I slide a little bit, so it's.
How's it going?
Yeah, you know.
I'm not sure why I'm here, folks. But
So let's move on to some game talk that we can all participate in. So we ask everybody to pick, all of us, to pick two games. One that we've played recently that has gotten us excited or made an impression, and another one that is on the horizon. one that we are excited to play in the very near future. Ben, why don't you go first?
So, I've fallen in love. I'm going to announce it here on the show, and I've fallen hard, and I've fallen hard for Paris by Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling. So many modern games are really complicated, and there's a lot of rules, and it's very difficult to get into. But Paris is so efficient and neat, and what you do on your turn is almost laughably easy. But the ramifications of that are so huge, and it's such a brutal and wonderful and satisfying game. And what's unique about Paris is that I've never seen this before, that the engine of the game is the bonus track. Usually bonuses give you a little something to help your game, but here the whole bonus track is the thing. How far do you jump forward? Do you take that tile because you fear someone else is going to take it, or do you not go forward so far, but someone else might take what you want? And we played it the other night, and I lost by 5 points because I didn't take one tile, and that one tile completely sort of shattered my end game. And Paris is wonderful, and if you haven't tried it, try it. But the overproduction in that game is embarrassing, in my view. Well, cardboard is fine. We don't need half of the German forest to go into making a game.
I think it's cute that you think that game's overproduced. But I would say in the middle, I would take out that, and I just play on the board. We don't need that whole 3D monument, but I think it's fine.
The Arc de Triomphe, you can't see the other half of the board. You have to take it off because it's completely impractical. But yeah, it's that minor gripe aside, Paris is so good, and it's the best Euro game I've played in a long time, I think.
Cool. So what's on the horizon for you, Ben?
So this is actually inspired by two Dice Tower people, the aforementioned sort of Don Juan of the Dice Tower Network, Mike Delisio, and based upon watching a review Tom did the other week, actually, and that's Mila Fury. Because I've only really discovered Knizia in the last sort of 5 years, and I saw it at Essen. And the thing with Essen is that there are 1,200 games published every year at Essen, and 800 of them are published by Rona Knizia. So sometimes you miss games by him. And yeah, I watched Tom's review and I thought, this is exactly what I want. It feels a bit Blue Lagoon-y, very, very simple actions that, promote really, really tricky decisions. And so I'm hoping it's going to be good. I bought it the other day and I'm playing it on Thursday.
Well, remember, if you don't like it, I was recommended
I blame
it by
you
Mike
entirely.
Delisio. All right, what about you, Eric?
So for me, everyone sort of knows by now that I'm a huge fan of Freedom and Freeze. I'll try just about anything he comes out, and one of his latest is a pick up and deliver game. Of course, that's something I'm interested in, called Free Ride. This is in one of those big Rio Grande games, big rectangular boxes that you don't see much of anymore. It's a pick up and deliver game with a map of Europe, and you're moving your train around and making routes to begin with through the picking up of these route cards, and then when you pick up a route, you are taking one of those three as a pickup point and one of the other two as the drop-off point and discarding the third. And you're building routes kind of like Transamerica as you place routes around the board and then moving your guy around and trying to score points. I really liked mechanically this game. And I'm trying to decide if I want to get over some wacky graphical decisions and still purchase this game and decide to play it. They decided not to use any sort of color coding or clear symbology to separate the board into different sections. So when you're faced with 3 cards, you get like 6 groupings of 3 cards. And you have to look over this map of Europe and figure out, all right, so here's Stuttgart, and here's Rottingham, and here's Berlin, and so you're trying to figure out which things can connect to what am I close to, where would I need to go if I picked up that cluster of cards, and it's very overwhelming to try and figure that out. And there's a lot of discussions as to whether coloring the cards would help or adding little tokens on the board would help. And I liked it so much, I'm considering trying to take one of those measures to still enjoy the game, because I think it's worth looking past that. But it's hard to get past.
I wish Freeman Freeze would hire a graphic designer. Seriously, his games are so good.
I'm sure,
but they look
I'm sure he's got
terrible.
One.
I'm sorry, a good one.
So I liked it, but I haven't decided yet if I'm making a purchase, because there is a significant hurdle to get past on that. And in the future, I just got a copy from Funko Games, the Back to the Future Back in Time game.
My mind is
if
blown.
you remember,
you haven't played this yet.
So I got the other one. I got the Ravensburger, the one they came out almost simultaneously. They're in the same size box. They have very similar covers. Back to the Future Dice Through Time is the Ravensburger co-op. Mm-hmm. Back to the Future Back in Time is the Funko Games cooperative game. Back in Time focuses on just the first film, where you are in 1955 and you're trying to get George and Lorraine to fall in love or stay in love, be in love when 10:04 p.m. hits and lightning strikes the clock tower. You're moving them around and trying to avoid Biff and all these character powers. It looks like a blast. I'm excited to try it out. The dice game covers the entire breadth of the franchise.
Well, for those of you listening on podcasts, when Eric said covers, I'm making quotation marks there.
It involves all of the timelines for the various films. But I have not yet played the Funko, which generally is regarded as the stronger game, so I'm excited to give that.
It's the one I've played, I think.
That's very
It's
fun.
light, but very, very entertaining.
How about you, Tom?
Alrighty, well, first I want to do a flashback to last episode, or I think it was last episode, we talked about Cantaloupe, the second one.
Oh, yes. Did you finish it?
I did finish it. Me and my daughter finished it, although we kind of we dragged to a finish, unfortunately. I'll say this real briefly. If you played the first one, you can wait for the third one. First of all, the amount of time that's processed in the second one is about it's so short. I don't think you'll even notice like getting to the second point. And secondly, if you don't like Robo Rally or puzzles like that, that is literally half of this book, which is fine if that's what you're looking for, but it is so far different than the first book. And we got to the point where we got to one of those puzzles and we were like, we solved it. We didn't even try. Because we weren't, that's not why we were there. That's not why I bought this game.
I am this close to making the same decision, Tom. I have not finished it, and every time I reach one of those puzzles, I go, okay, I'm gonna take like 2 or 3 attempts, and then I'm done. But I've gotten very close to just saying, yeah, all right, I solved that. I understand what you're doing. I called it a mini game when we talked about it 2 weeks ago. It's more than, like you said, it's like half the game. It's a major aspect of the game, which is not like anything else in the game, the solving of the puzzles and walking around to locations. It's very different. And if you don't enjoy that, it's a bit of a slowdown to the whole process.
But the game I am talking about, where did I put it here now? Did I not put the game in that I'm going to talk about? Well, then that's the one I'm talking about. It's Cantaloupe. I'm going to talk about it some more now. No, I got to talk about this. I don't have a picture of it, folks, but you're just going to have to accept that it's here. And that is Unlock Kids. This is
the kids set.
The kids version of Unlock. And I very rarely give a 10 out of 10, but that's what this gets. That is how good this is. It doesn't use an app, which I was surprised about, but I played it with my son. And we went through, there's 6 things in, they're each about 20 to 30 minutes. And had I not said, you're going to bed, he would have stayed up and finished the whole thing. I put him to bed. The next day, he was like, we got to do it again. I was like, when I get home, we'll play it some more if you're good. He got up early, did all his chores. He was on the Switch when I got home, and I said, do you want to play the game? And he threw the Switch aside and went and played.
Wow.
It's that good. It's just a deck of cards. You're just combining cards and doing things, but he could figure out almost everything on his own. Every once in a while, I might be like, you got a shovel. What do you think you should do with a shovel? You know, stuff like that. and it's great. If you have elementary school kids, this is one of the best kids games I've ever played. Straight up.
Huh.
I mean, apart from Core Quest, of course.
Makes Core Quest look like... No, never mind. It's a very different game. The game I'm anxious to try out here, I've been sitting on this one for a while, is Tales from the Loop, the board game. Now, I wish I could, when I do play it, compare it to the TV show, but I fell asleep during the first and second episodes of this very, 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 very slow-moving show. My word. I didn't even watch any episode after that because it's a pretty show. It's a show that's based on, I think, a bunch of paintings, and you can tell, just look at the painting. But that being said, this game does look like it's geared towards families, I think, where you're going to go around and solve mysteries in town, have adventures, and get home before you get in trouble for not being home in time for bed. And I like that concept. I mean, if it works for kids. I'm always looking for adventure games for kids that have like a bit of a spooky mystery. Like my kids love, the whole Stranger Things vibe. But that's all. Stranger Things is a little more than kids, right? There's some pretty terrible stuff in that. I'm hoping this is a little bit more that speed.
Cool. So, Ben, we certainly appreciate you hanging out with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
If people are looking for more information on 5 Games for Doomsday or any of your other projects, where's the best place to go?
So there's a little YouTube channel that's that they're trying, bless them, called the Dice Tower. And there's a show by an incredibly handsome Englishman called Design Notes with Ben Maddox, where I interview designers. There's 21, 22 have been released at this point, and you've got Knizia there, you've got Garfield there, you've got a lot of really interesting people. The last episode was Patrick Leader of Leader Games, really, really interesting. So you can go on the Dice Tower and see my stuff. Also, so all of where great podcasts are sold. So go to your podcatcher on your phone, type in 5 Games for Doomsday, and I promise you, I talk less on those shows. And or you can go to 5gamesfordoomsday.com, or I don't want to be cheeky, but you don't even have to listen to any of the podcasts. You can just go to patreon.com/5G for D, throw me $100. It's fine. You don't even have to listen to the shows. I don't care.
Well, on that note,
well, all right.
On a more pertinent note, then, folks, the Dice Tower Pledge Manager is live on GameFound. So if you haven't backed the Dice Tower Kickstarter and you'd like to, just go to dicetowerkickstarter.com and you can still back us there. Or if you did back us and you need to fill out the Pledge Manager, go ahead and do that. Also, the cruise. The cruise is opening up soon, dicetowercruise.com. So if you want to come on a very entertaining floating boat full of games, but also food.
I'm glad it's a floating boat, Tom.
As opposed to all the other kind of boats. I don't know.
As opposed to the other options.
I meant to say floating convention, all right? Sorry, I got fancy.
Titanic Dice Tower Cruise.
I did say the first time we went on the cruise ship to check it out, we got on board and the Titanic theme song was playing, and I thought, I wouldn't.
That's a terrible choice.
It does seem like an odd choice. I guess My Heart Will Go On is a nice song, but I don't think I would play it on a cruise ship.
Indeed. All right. Well, I guess it's time to wrap things up, sir.
Oh, well,
thank you so much for hanging out with us, Ben.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been fabulous.
Well, anyway, folks, until next time then, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And we'll see you soon at the table.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you again in 2 weeks when our guest will be board game marketing professional Danny Lowe. At the Table is produced by Tom and me with assistance from Roy Cannaday, Camilla Cleghorn, Mike Delisio, and Chris Yee.
And
our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. Our Snake of Thupendith Thithe is brought to you by Lisp Boa. And support for everything at the Dice Tower comes from viewers and listeners like you. Reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter, or to Tom at Dicetower.com or Eric at Dicetower.com. Until we see you again, from all of us at the table, have fun gaming.
Oh, that's right. I'm supposed to do the outro.